The following video was recorded at the Birchip Cropping Group's Sheep Management Showcase, held at Birchip Leisure Centre on August 17, 2016. Please note the views expressed in this video do not necessarily reflect the views of Birchip Cropping Group. You'll notice on the program that we've billed Nathan Scott to speak today. Unfortunately, unforeseen circumstances have made it so that he can't come, but in his place we have the very capable Scott Dennis. Scott, who is our last speaker of the day, manages a family wool, lamb and beef cropping property at Birchip, I think it is, which has given him a very good understanding of all the components of livestock production and business management. Today the talk's going to be focused on EID and other technology and how it is now and what might come about in the future and how we can use it on farms and if we can make money with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Justine. As mentioned, I'm sort of filling in for Nathan Scott, who would be here to deliver the presentation, but I come from a family farm down near Birchip, which was correctly pronounced, thank you, near Colac, running approximately 1,000 acres of crop, 1,000 acres of pasture for livestock, and about 1,000 acres of what is tussock, low value pasture, swamp, water, rocks. The livestock are mainly merinos and composites, and we think we're working towards matching the livestock components to the land that we're running them on. I think everybody in the room would realise that whatever we're doing, we can do something better. Whatever we're doing now, even if we think we're doing it really well, there's always room and scope for improvement. So what excites you about the livestock industry? I think if I asked you to explain to a 10 or 12-year-old, you'd be struggling to find stuff that excites you about the livestock industry, whereas there's heaps of stuff going on in terms of technology today that we can point to. The shearing industry started off with a handpiece that looks like this. We now have blue handpieces, red handpieces, and if you're really lucky you can have yellow handpieces too. The cropping game, as you would all know, has really embraced technology, anywhere from auto steer to yield mapping, and even through to more recent technologies like this. So a little bit of cropping porn for you there. I think standing in a room full of croppers and showing a video like that shows that you guys can change, and the sheep industry has always been accused of not being able to change. But the fact that you're here today implies that you are ready to look at new opportunities and are ready to make those sorts of changes. It's important because, and I think everybody would have seen this before, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again and expecting the same results. So we need to do something different. When we look at our day-to-day operations, we can basically put everything into this circle. So there'll be things that come up that can be completely out of our control, which we can be concerned about, but it's pretty pointless worrying about them because we can't do anything about it. I suppose weather and things would fit into that. There'll be things that we can control, and they are probably the more things that we should be focusing on. Like IT, probably should. There we go. Okay. So here's a few things that we've put down that can come into day-to-day operations on the farm. Some of the things that we've been looking at today, like genetics, labour, pasture, markets, disease as well. There's no point in controlling or trying to control everything. We just run ourselves into the ground. What we need to do is focus on those things that we can control, let the others run their course, and try and influence the ones that we can as well. Technology will play a certain role in that, in trying to bring those things that we can control into the middle. Luckily, we have plenty of these things running around in our paddock. Now, it looks sort of like a sheep, but it's actually a packet of data, and the key is to unlock what that data is telling us. Just like you to consider a standard population of a sheep flock, everything will fall into a normal distribution. So at one end, you'll have the poor performers, through the middle, the bulk, and then the best performers at the top end. In a traditional mob situation, you might cull out the obvious poor performers, but after that, you'll run pretty much the same thing every year. So you'll maintain that normal distribution, and when it's 6 years old, it'll head off the farm. If we're able to track individual performance, we might be able to cull out in the first year those poor performers and then carry forward for the rest of the years on the farm the average and the better performers. We could even keep the better performers further on because they are likely to still have better genetics than some of those others in the younger years. So all we're doing is moving this normal distribution curve and giving it a shove. The trick is to identify what those poor performers are going to do, what data to collect, and what criteria we use for culling them. Are we mostly merinos within the room? Righto. If we look at merinos, the Sheep CRC has done a trial and looked at a commercial flock. The top 25% of merino of the flock was cutting $82 worth of wool. The average was $54 and the bottom 25% was $37. Same amount of feed goes into these animals, same amount of husbandry, just that range of difference. If we look at lambs weaned, we have the top 25% doing 143%, the average at 86%, and the lowest 25% at 28%, which is pretty concerning. Obviously, there'll be some of those of the 28% that will be cutting the $82 worth of wool. We'll also have some of the 28% only cutting the $37 of wool, and some of the higher end weaning percentages cutting more wool as well. So what we want to do is find out those ones that are costing the business. This is just an example of electronic ID used to collect fleece data off the board. So fleeces were collected during the shed, put through a testing machine. Fleece weight and micron were gathered on individual fleeces, so therefore linked back to individual animals. As you can see, there's no real relationship between fleece weight and micron. It's pretty much a scatter One of the reasons why we're interested in the variation in our flock is that we used to have these things called wethers. Wethers used to be sacked off the farm when things got tough, when the season turned a bit ordinary. There was no emotion involved with the wethers. They were the first to go. Now that we don't have wethers within our flock, we still need that release valve that gives us the opportunity to save grass or focus on the more productive animals. So knowing which ones are the passengers is pretty important. And once they are gone out of the system, the whole flock then becomes more productive as well. So it's turning a problem into an opportunity. This is another graph used in a lot of our presentations, which shows average growth rate per day, so kilograms gained per day. So you can see a lot of people talk about 300 grams per day being a good number to aim for. As you can see there's a lot of lambs doing 400, even above 500 grams a day over an extended period of time. The growth rate is actually between birth and day 85. So you can see that there's quite a bit of weight put on there. Average of those lambs was 385 grams a day, and this isn't even a high-performing flock, it's just to maternal rams. You might think that this is not overly relevant, especially for the merino producers, but weaning weight is critical, not just for prime lamb production, but weaning weight is one of the biggest drivers of weaner survival in a merino flock too. I'll come back to that in a minute. If we take that data on weaning weight and use what's called Pedigree Matchmaking, and I've got a video of that later, we can identify which ewes are weaning most weight on the farm. So you can easily see there the difference between a ewe that's producing $50 worth of lamb compared to $250. So why should we use EID? Everything we can do at the moment we can do manually. So EID is more accurate for one, it's easier, faster, and it's more likely to happen. Many people have sheep scales at the moment on their properties. Are they set permanently in those locations? So human nature is that if they are set up, you're more likely to use them. Who here came thinking about the chair that they were going to sit on today? I'm glad nobody put up their hand. EID is like the chair. So you came here to learn about stuff. You came here to learn about technology. The chair you're sitting on is just a means to get there. And I think that's pretty important to remember. It's really the outcome that we're looking for. Obviously, with a day like this, we've got plenty of stuff on exhibit, and it's all nice and shiny and new. But what we strongly recommend is that you look at what the outcomes are that you're looking from your enterprise, work out what the data is that you need to be collecting to try and achieve that goal. You might not need an auto drafter, you might just need electronic tags and a stick reader. So going through a spreadsheet like this and trying to work out where you're trying to improve fleece weight or kilograms of lambs produced, and working out whether a contractor can do it or whether you don't need all the latest whiz-bang machinery. Obviously the machinery out there is very good and does a great job, and the salesmen do a fantastic job too. A couple of different electronic tags that are out in the system at the moment, approved tags. So we have the Allflex, the Shearwell and the Leadertronic across the top, the Allflex two-piece on the bottom left, the Z tag, Enduro tag and the Leader two-piece tag. And you can see the price differences there. I think I saw some stick readers outside as well with, well, definitely with Gallagher. The two readers that are most common are obviously the stick reader and the panel reader. There are quite a few new generation stick readers getting about. As demonstrated, they can be uploaded with information, so you can actually scan a tag in a paddock or in the yards and look at the history of that animal right then and there. Along the bottom of this slide, you can see the Allflex Rapid ID tagger, the Shearwell Race Reader, the Sapien Panel Reader, and the True Test XR5000. In terms of auto drafters, you would have seen the Gallagher one outside, and also available are the Prattley. So the one in the middle is a fully automatic, no pushing a button to close the gates. It's all done by weight transfer. The one on the top right is the electronic one. Bottom left is the Tapari, and Tapari also have a drench gun which can be used with the scales. So it actually weighs the animal, adjusts the drench volume for the weight of the animal, so you can give it the right dose, which can provide obviously financial savings as well as the correct health benefits. That was just a short video which showed obviously the red tag, the red lambs and the blue lambs had been marked earlier, scanned, recorded, uploaded onto the auto drafter, and then just run through. And it shows you how easily that can work. So what data to collect? For one, it's expensive. There's no point collecting data unless you're going to use it. There's just about anything can be measured and recorded against an animal. But the more data you have, the more difficult it is to manage. And therefore you should only be collecting the data that you're going to use and that is going to add value to your enterprise. The sort of stuff which we have seen being collected and is able to be collected: individual body weights, fleece weights, micron, fat and eye muscle scanning, visual sheep classing and assessments, pregnancy scanning, animal health records, worm egg counts, treatments, stock auditing, and also Pedigree Matchmaker, which I referred to earlier. I've got a quick video here which just shows how that works. So sheep are going past the panel reader into a water area or a feeding area. The data is, so the lambs have tags as well. After a number of days of having this set up, the information's collected. The lambs that follow the ewes through are generally associated with the ewe, and that way we can work out which ewes have which lambs. We heard Ken and I think Tim talking about the KPIs in the industry, one of them being kilograms of lamb weaned per hectare, which also relates to the dollars of lamb weaned per hectare. With the Pedigree Matchmaker, we can use that plus the data that I had up before, the individual weaning weights, to give us the litter weight weaned per ewe. Now this obviously reflects the fertility, the number of lambs born, the survival, lactation, lamb growth, all of those things that go into one of the most important KPIs on a sheep enterprise. So that's the graph that I had up before. And you can clearly see the ewes that are singles through the middle, through the bottom. Through the middle are the twins, and at the top are the triplets. Anybody who tells me that they want a good single over twins, you're kidding yourself. Twins will always beat singles and triplets will always beat the twins. As I mentioned or started to launch into before, weaning weight's pretty critical for merino producers as well, because we've done it on a number of merino farms. And you can see again the same difference between the singles and the twins and the weaning weights. So it's pretty critical that we identify which ones are doing which and which ones are getting up to that weaning weight earlier. How many people here are able to tell me confidently what their growth rates were last year? One. I can't imagine a dairy farmer not knowing what's going into his vat every day. Similarly, I think a wheat farmer doesn't just look at the whole farm and look at the total tonnes that are coming off the whole farm. You want to be looking at it on a paddock scale, even on parts of the paddock. Obviously, you can't improve what you don't measure, and I think what Raquel was saying is people in this area are not scanning for multiples. They're starting to get into scanning. That's one of the easiest things that we can measure. We can actually record it with EIDs. Do you record with EIDs? Yep. So you're able to easily record against EIDs after the scanning as well, and then measure how much wastage there is in lamb losses. Collecting data is important, but what is very important is understanding the information.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So it's fairly important that you understand the information that you're gathering. What about off-farm? Developments after the farm gate in recent times. We've heard about the health issues being reported back to farmers. A lot of that stuff is now being more possible on an individual basis with tracking systems that are going in. There are 4 individual tracking systems that are going in around Victoria. And they'll be able to collect stuff like hot standard carcass weight on an individual animal, retain and trimming and other health, as was mentioned earlier. In the future, it is possible that we'll get information like dressing percentage and lean meat yield and fat as well. So where is lamb processing heading in the future? That's the DEXA system showing bone structure, which then allows the machines to cut the carcass down into the most efficient cuts. What it also can provide is an estimate on the lean meat yield. But if we end up just focusing on lean meat yield, we'll end up with pork. We all know how hard that is to cook just right. There's new technology getting about or being developed with hyperspectral camera on the left and impedance probe on the right. There's been better work done with the hyperspectral camera in identifying eating quality. These sorts of things are looking to be implemented on the chain on individual animals. I think the next video will show the difference in cutting based on that bone structure. You can find videos of that on YouTube, and I don't know about you, but I can watch that for a long time. So what excites you now about the industry? Unfortunately, excitement isn't enough just on its own. You need to go home and do something about it. There's plenty of new technologies and new things to play with. But there is actually a science behind the motivation that makes you change and achieve. I'm sure a couple of people, and I know myself, come away from a day like today with a to-do list. And the good thing about a to-do list is you get to cross things off as you get them done. Something comes with crossing things off a list. It's dopamine. Dopamine is a hormone, commonly referred to as the love hormone. Basically, it's the good feeling that we have. So when we cross something off, we get a good feeling that we've achieved something. Always leaves us wanting more. It's also the hormone that drives drug addiction. Problem is, with a long list of things to do, we can easily add one. And then cross it off when we do it. Gives us our hit of dopamine. Doesn't get the important things done though. Also, what drives Facebook and Twitter, we get a hit of dopamine when someone likes what we post. By the way, we're on Twitter. Find us here. The problem is with to-do lists, they can lead to procrastination. Tomorrow is a mystical land where 99% of all human productivity, motivation and achievement is stored. If you're like me, I used to always say, don't do today what can be put off till tomorrow. Which is what I worked at with uni. So I had a graph, work out how much work was required leading up to an assignment due date. Looks nice and steady leading up towards the end, but inevitably, bang. This is what really happens, and we can fill that in with lots of other stuff which is not important to the assignment. And because of procrastination, we get things like this as well. Goes for 10 minutes. No. So to make a to-do list work properly, we need to break it down into smaller activities. So breaking down improving lamb survival, we might have ewe conditioning, nutritional requirements, smaller paddocks for ewes, applying urea and GA, worm egg counts, drenching, vaccinating. A lot more achievable. However, we then run into the problem of the paradox of choice. Some researchers identified this by setting up an experiment in a park. They put out 2 stalls. One offered 24 different types of jam and the other only offered 6. 60% of the people stopped to look at the stall with the more jam options. Only 40% stopped to look at the one with 6. 3% of people bought jam on the heavier stocked stall, 30% bought jam on the other. So if you had 100 people come past, less than 2 bought jam from the stall with 24 options, while 12 purchased from the stall that only had 6. So too many options results in no decisions at all. So what do we do with our long list of actions that we need to be doing as a result of being here today? Well, what we can do is prioritise. So we can put those most important activities with an A, those that we think are second priority with a B, and finally those at the bottom with a C. The problem with that is if getting the ute serviced was a C, it'd only happen when it actually had a wheel fall off it. So it's only when they are critical that those C activities get done. What's a good idea is taking that to the next level, so actually putting those activities into a calendar. So now the activities are time-bound as well. There's a great amount of accountability and more effectiveness in getting them done. You can still get that dopamine hit by crossing them off as well. So the best way to get something done is to begin. So it's time for a change. We regularly hear about they. They should do this, they should do that. Why haven't they done something? I don't know about you, but they sound like a pack of idiots. It isn't their industry, it's ours. As far as we're concerned, they can get stuffed. This is about our future, our opportunities. Whatever we do well today, we can do better tomorrow. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Scott. Okay, we're going to open it up to questions now. Warwick.
Yes, a couple of questions, Scott. One, in regard to weaning weights, which you put a lot of emphasis on, one of the things which you haven't covered is the date of birth of the lamb, and that can vary quite a lot. 30 days in less than 100. And how do you overcome that one? The second question is to do with measuring meat quality. Is that measuring intermuscular fat, and what level should we aim for in that area?
I'll answer the second one first. That was measuring a number of different things with the eating quality. So the spear type 1 was showing shear force, so obviously eating quality with regard to tenderness. I'm not sure about the hyperspectral camera, whether that was looking at intermuscular fat or not. How we relate that back to on-farm selection, I'm not quite sure yet, but obviously there'll be more developments in that later on. But certainly my reference to the pork industry, we don't want to go down the complete lean meat yield by losing all that intramuscular fat.
I understand some terminal sires actually have gone down the track and got a lot less intermuscular fat and less eating quality.
Yep, I agree with that. On the first question, with the weaning weight, with those ones there, a lot of those were done just taking an average of, so they were tighter joinings of 5 weeks, so they'd take the mid date and they'd take an assumed weight of the lamb. and I think in one or two of those merino examples I put up, they actually took a lamb marking weight. So when they mark the lamb, they take it out of the cradle, weigh it with its electronic tag, and then use that, which still gives a good reflection on the ewe's ability to milk and raise it after, or keep it growing after marking as well.
So what about the significance of weighing it at 15 months, say at the next shearing? Would that be a time when they could even out, the twins would even out a lot from the singles?
Yeah, so only weigh them at 15 months, you mean? It would, but I think it would still give you... gathering that sort of information, if it's important to you, the weight at 15 months, it might be for their first joining as a maiden, is still is still important information to your enterprise, then that's probably still important.
Any more questions from anybody?
With all this technology, I imagine one of the biggest hurdles is getting growers to interpret the data and make sense of it. How far away is it where a program can sense the weight of the ewes and then whether they're joined, and then what the feed requirement would be for the coming months for the grower in a printed out software that will tell him how many, is he overstocked, is he not, as a forward-thinking decision? Yeah,
I haven't heard of anything that can do that or would even be in the pipeline yet. I was actually, because walkover weighing is another thing which we've looked at, but it's fairly unreliable in getting the lambs to stand on the platform as they're crossing. Works well in remote areas like Northern Territory and weighing cattle, but so, I mean, you're taking it another couple of steps further from there. So I think you'd probably be using your scanner to gather that information on pregnancy status, whether you can link that then with the weight to the condition score of the animal, which is more critical on what her consumption and pregnancy status would be on her nutritional requirements. So there'll be a few things going on.
There's one more question here.
In recent times, DNA testing has become, you can do it. Where can you see that leading, and how far away can you, is genoming, so you can actually pick your traits before they're doing it? It's pretty big in the dairy industry, particularly at the moment, so they can pick their best performing cows at 6 weeks. That's the ultimate. You can DNA test the lambs as you wean them. Where can that lead to? What can we gain from all that?
Well, I think there's certainly studs that are using that information already. So, and I couldn't exactly tell you what the cost of a DNA test is. I think it's, I was going to say 100, 20. So, yeah, for those specific traits that you're looking to identify, then I think it's a very valuable tool because it might be able to save you a lot of time and effort in collecting that other data that you're trying to extrapolate to give you that information that you would potentially be able to collect with a genetic test.
Just bringing it back to our mixed farming systems, I guess, and on a lot of properties around here, sheep would be the secondary enterprise. What's the one piece of information or the one piece of equipment that, has the potential to give our producers return on investment in their mixed systems?
Yep.
Sorry.
I think, yeah, the main message I was trying to get across was everybody's enterprise and drivers, and we've had Ken Solly talk about different people's drivers for why they are working on the farm. So I think you'd need to look at your own situation, where you want your sheep to be. If you just want them as a run out in the back paddock and not look at them too often, and you're happy with them just as a bit of a relief valve, then you're probably not going to be looking at a $20,000 or $30,000 auto drafter. From a simple getting started point of view, electronic tags and a wand is where I started. So, and then using contractors for gathering other information. So having someone come in and weigh them at a certain time, or the preg scanner coming in and recording that with the wand, that sort of information I've been using. So just on a personal level, that would be my advice.
Any more questions? If not, I'd like to ask you to put your hands together and thank Scott. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
you.